Guten Abend. I hope everybody is fine. I remember when I watched the movie, I was quite moved. It's a massive movie and a heavy movie. But I want to first thank you all for being here and for taking the time to look over the plate on other sides of the earth, to look what's happening there, especially in this pandemic where we are all pretty much focused on ourselves sometimes. I'm Raffaella Roth. I'm a journalist at the NZZ am Sonntag in Zurich. And I'm here with Imad Ayoun. Nice to meet you. Nice that you're here. Thank you very much. Imad is working with Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, as we know it better here. He is working as a communication and advocacy advisor or officer at the moment. He was working for a long time as an advocate for children's rights, with Save the Children, with Médecins Sans Frontières now. Thank you that you're here. And I want to welcome Feras Fayyad too. I don't know if we have... Yes, here he is. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear.
Very nice that you're here. Very nice that we got this connection. Feras Fayyad, he is the director of the film. He's joining us from Berlin this evening. Before he had to flee Syria, he was filming in the war zone another film already. He filmed A Last Man in Aleppo, which was quite successful. And now he's here with The Cave, an Oscar-nominated film. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
First, I have some good news. Good news for you, Feras. You won another prize. Interfilm Switzerland chose your film to be the first in their edition of the Prix Célestine. It's the first time this prize is awarded, and it's going to you. We heard the jury statement this evening, and you will be informed by emails with all of the details.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
So Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm so humble with this. I think this is also good to be shared, make more people see it, and bring the light to the story of the doctors who was fight for saving lives.
My first question after I watched the film was, I was thinking all about Dr. Armani. Where is she now? How is she doing? And how did her life continue?
Dr. Armani, she's now in Berlin. She's also a refugee here in Germany, as well me. So we live in the same city. Now she's with her husband. She get married, and from like almost now 1 year, they live together. They are like she's feel now more safe. Even it's not easy like to feel you are forced displaced from your country.
I can imagine. You found a great character in her. She seems like she's a very impressive woman. She's a feminist. She's a fighter. She's intelligent, but also empathic. How did you find her? How did you find her story?
Dean, it's not hard, to find such stories in Syria. I mean, normally the Syrian society who is like working in the safely, or like in the helping the other people, their stories is really they are really a small community, so you can find that. I heard about Dr. Amani many times, and through connections, I managed to connect her and connect many of people. There's like a few hospital was managing and running inside Syria, and those few hospitals they're serving the society. And I was really wanna really tell the stories of the hospital. When I tell story, I don't mean story because it's real life of these people. I want to bring what's happening in those hospital because my family lives there without any medical facilities and support. So the story of Dr. Amani, story of my family, story of me, story of every Syrian who run outside because there is no services. So I feel this is a story could represent the stories of the genocide in Syria and the stories of the suffer from the attack on the hospital and the risk of the doctors. And how much this losing doctors and losing the hospital, how much put the society under pressure to leave and turn to be refugees or losing our lives.
Mm-hmm. You were able to, in the middle of a war zone, you were able to film very intimate situations with her. I remember especially a scene when she's talking to a girl and what she wants to be in the future or what she wants to become. How did you manage to get as close to her?
Through communication, I've been arrested and tortured by the Syrian regime because documenting Syria. I was a filmmaker. I wasn't a politician person. I'm just a filmmaker who doing movies, and I arrested because I was documenting Syria. I was active from the beginning of the revolution to do the documentation. And when I talked to her, her brother was also arrested. So there is a lot of those connections about what does it mean to be in the prison, what does it mean to lose, to have a family member disappear and nobody know about it. So that the feeling connect us, and we start to talk. In the beginning, she wasn't the main characters because the main subject of the movie, because we don't know actually if we will put her life in dangerous, if the hospital will fall down or be taken, the story or we will manage to put her story fully on the film. Until we was documenting, we didn't know if this is documentation will end as a film. So we said, like, if this is not end as a film, then we could use it as a testimony in history, a documentation for the situation. We could just make something to support the documentation for crime against the humanity in this way. Even the way we was filming, it's filming as a story for make people to get closer to feeling more than just like a legal documentation. But we was try to find a balance between legal documentation and artistic perspective in this way, and that what I try to do in the both film Last Minute and the Cave. So that the way how it's end. When I managed to finish the first rough cut, I show her when she left Syria and ended in Turkey. She's surprised. She said, "This is a film about me." I said, "Yes." She said, "No, we should show more." The other doctor, I said, "Your story represent my story every Syrian, represent every doctor story. I think it's unique because you are the first female doctor who leading hospital in these situations. Also, you managed to succeed and run this hospital, and there is many things inside that could educate us, could be a testimony in this history. It's also make more attention for the work that you do for our stories as a Syrian, against the propaganda that all the time being separated about the people who was living in the areas that under attack from the Russian and the Syrian regime was all the time there's the idea that who's seeking democracy is accused as a terrorist, and that and all of them like a male and etc. from this accusation that build from the beginning of the revolution in Syria. So I feel it's really a story for the truth from artistic perspective, but also from the feminist point of view that never told before.
Mm-hmm. As you just told us, you were tortured yourself. You were like a part of the movie, but you were also filmmaker. You were in the war zone. You witnessed chemical attacks, war crimes. Is it sometimes hard to stay in the role of a filmmaker?
I don't know. I mean, I never called myself I'm a filmmaker on those two films. I don't really feel this is make me a filmmaker, because it's just what we try to bring. We bring stories. We bring a testimony on what's happened in our country. So what does that credit means? It doesn't mean anything. You know, we were not able to manage to feel ourselves in that. It's a pain and suffer and death, and you know, it's just like a shame sometimes, like to just call yourself directed by or a film by. But this is how sometimes we can try to bring and make an access more for the audience through festival and through everywhere. So I don't know if I can call myself a maker of, or I can continue in this situation in this way. But you know, I feel it is my duty. This is the only way that I can help my family, help the people that I know, help my fellow citizen, because it's my country. Those people mean for me. Their surviving is survive for all our society, and that important. But also it's inspiring. You know, it's teach us something very important about what does mean to be anti-war person, to care about the other, not about yourself, to be selfless in such a situation, to give more than taken. And that what really drove me, because this is how I feel my society. If this is what I feel the Syrian, they give people, they try to help, they try to be collaborate with each other, and be even what's happened in Syria separated us and destroyed the society, destroyed the trust. But there is a lot of hope that us as a Syrian, we need to see it in each other and to believe there is something in the future we can build it.
Okay, thank you very much. Some questions to you, Imad. In your work with MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, you worked in the Middle East, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq. Have you seen hospitals like that?
Hospitals underground, I haven't seen them myself personally, but we have, in the case of Syria, we've worked often remotely with these kinds of hospitals. So in a sense, we've been able to find locations within Syria where we can be physically present, and then we would send supplies in to hospitals that we couldn't access. We have a long and complicated history in Syria. I mean, we don't have physical presence everywhere. We have not been allowed to work legally by the government inside Syria. So what we do is we try as much as possible to send in supplies, assistance. We saw in the movie several times where the doctor is on the phone talking to someone. This is often how we operate. I mean, we're on the phone with people inside. We're on Skype. We're trying to find out what are the supplies they need, what's the situation like, and based on that, we send supplies in. So that's it's quite specific for Syria and specifically war zones, but in other places we tend to be there ourselves. So we tend to be physically present in hospitals, and they tend to be, of course, I mean, in war zones they can be partially destroyed or fully destroyed, but to the extent of what we saw, I don't think we have been physically present.
Which conditions do you need to be able to supply hospitals with medicines? We saw it in the film. It was always short on material. They had no medicine.
It's very tricky. I mean, you need to be able to, first of all, know who you're dealing with. I mean, you need to be able to identify the doctors, the network of doctors, the locations that need the most assistance. You need to establish some relationship of trust with them. In these kinds of contexts, it's quite messy. I mean, sometimes when you're on the phone with someone, you don't really know who you're talking to. We often triangulate information. We try to find out from different people what is the situation in this location, who is this doctor, are they really a doctor as well? I mean, we have some kind of responsibility to make sure that we're not causing more harm. So when we want to supply or send supplies in, we need to make sure that we're sending it to the right people to do the right things. Then one other complication is the logistics. I mean, it's also not easy. It's not easy to say we're going to send in supplies. I mean, there is roadblocks, there is checkpoints. Sometimes we send supplies across country borders. So in the case of Syria, it could be from Turkey or from Lebanon or from Iraq. So then there's the logistics, and we have had many cases where things that we send in don't really make it. They just disappear somewhere in the system. Or the supplies get bombed or they get hit. So there is that element that makes it quite hard. And the nature of our organization is that we accept to take that risk. I mean, we end up accepting the risk that we might send supplies in that never make it, but hoping that the little bit of supplies that make it can actually make a difference.
Mm-hmm. From your experience, can attacks on hospital, attacks on doctors, bombing of hospitals, can it be a strategy of war?
Yes, for sure. I mean, we've seen it in many places, and I think in the case of Syria, I mean, it's still happening. There's been airstrikes up to a month ago that we know of. We've had it in countries like Yemen. It happens in many countries, and I think it's part of when you're looking to hit the infrastructure. A hospital is a very key component of the infrastructure of any country, the medical system. At the same time, I think it's also more than the physical destruction of a hospital. It is psychological warfare. A hospital is meant to be a place where you go when you need. It's meant to be a safe space where you can go and seek treatment. I mean, it's meant to be when you're wounded, you go to a hospital, you get better. The feeling that happens to you when you know that hospitals are being hit is that this same space that you think you will be safe in and where you will get treated and get better becomes a threat in itself. In fact, in Syria, we know in a lot of cases, after many hospitals were being hit, people just refused to go to hospitals. Even when they were wounded, they would bleed to death. They were quite extreme situations where people would rather just die at home than go to a hospital with this fear that the hospital is a target like anything else. So why would I risk my life? Or why would I die away from my house? Or I don't know. I mean, so it has become, we saw a lot of this fear of going to hospitals that killed people sometimes more than the bombs killed people.
Mm-hmm. We saw doctors in the film who felt like they didn't have a choice but to help, and they would stay there until self-abandonment, maybe. Do you sometimes have to take doctors out who...
Yes.
Yeah.
Who don't want to go out, you mean?
Uh-huh.
Yes. Yes, I mean, it happens a lot. Inversely, we also... I mean, it's quite an intimate and personal experience, but we have had a lot of doctors who refuse to go out because they feel like this is their obligation. At least for an organization like ours, a lot of people join MSF very aware of the risks that come with the work that we do, and they are committed to it, and they have accepted the risks, and to some extent they have accepted that they could potentially be harmed or be killed or be wounded on the job, particularly in these places. I mean, we work in a lot of places where it's not a war zone, but at least in war zones, and we have evacuated on many occasions where we also face tension within our teams, where some people feel like they need to evacuate and some others don't. It's not easy situations, and we often tend to have criteria, what constitutes, what are the indicators for an evacuation. But it's quite hard because over time, as you also see in the documentary, over time, our staff, we all develop also attachments to the people that we treat, to the context where we work. We become part of it. So it's almost like you're forcibly displacing some of our staff sometimes. You're forcing them to leave somewhere where they feel at home.
Mm-hmm. movies like that, so people like us, we can see the situations very closely. We can almost be in there. We hear the terror of the warplanes ourselves. How important are they for your organization? Like,
how important is the day? You mean?
No, films like that.
Films like that. I mean, part of what we do as an organization like ours is obviously we treat people. I mean, we treat people all around the world. But another key component of our work is what we internally refer to as speaking out. So we engage in a lot of public visibility of what we see on the ground. So in a sense, the objective of this movie or documentary is very much aligned with the objective of most of the work that we do. We also speak out. We also document the things that happen in front of us. We also have doctors and people who work with us who go on TV and talk about what's happening in front of them. So it's an important part of our work because it's important that we don't only treat the wound, we don't only put a bandage, and we don't only do surgeries and fix immediate issues. I think it's important that we raise visibility of these issues with the hope of influencing situations beyond just the hospital. So you want to be able to make sure people in Switzerland, like all of us, are aware of what's happening, so that in their discussions, in their daily engagements, in their political activism, when we vote in different countries, people are aware of what's happening there. So it's beyond just the medical treatment. We also want to make sure that there is visibility of life outside our hospitals, what is leading to people being wounded and killed. It's not, we cannot treat this like an isolated hospital kind of thing. We need to also talk about what's happening around.
Mm-hmm. Are you also taking care of the sanity of doctors working for you?
Mental health, yeah. We do have, internally in the organization, we do have something called staff health, which is really about staff's well-being, and it includes everyone from the locations like the ones that you saw all the way up to people in headquarters like me, because you have a lot of people in headquarters who are also exposed to this kind of photos, videos, stories on a regular basis. So yes, overall, that's a key important. I mean, we try to see it as a comprehensive package, you know, that you don't only need the skills as a doctor to be a good doctor, you also need the right state of mind and the right mental health to be able to tolerate a month living like this, because I mean, when you go to a place like that or a war zone, or you have to have the right stamina, the right mindset to deal with this kind of trauma on a regular basis. And I have to be fair, we are privileged in a sense, because for the doctors or for staff that work with us that go to these countries, when things get really bad, we evacuate. Others do not evacuate. I mean, the people you saw on the documentary, they don't have the luxury of evacuating with an organization. It eventually happens in this documentary, but it's not up to them. It's not something that they can switch a button and say, we're going to leave now. So we are privileged, and we do make sure that we take care of our staff's mental health just so they can perform.
Maybe Feraz, one last question for you. Did you see doctors who gave up their mental health in order to help people?
Yeah, as you see, like most of the doctors, that I try to focus on this part of the story to show that the ongoing trauma that those doctor they have to face every day. It's the biggest obstacle they have to deal with, and nobody take care about it themselves. They don't have the time to take care about it. You see, like any sound could be turned to be a sensitive and affecting them. They turn to be hypersensitive about everything, and that, you know, with the pressure of the injuries and the victims that coming every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes during their operating for the hospital. And that what really I saw how much they was completely destroyed from inside. and they have to deal with that. They have to be like they have to hold that and face it to save the other life. And I never seen like something like this, such a sacrifice on everything in you. You burn, you see them burned in front of you to give the other something. That the case that in their case, and until now, after that, I kept my connection with them. Like Dr. Amani turned to be like a really close friend with Dr. Salim, and all the time I talk to them. I know how much they are really brave and strong people to keep their sanity and health strong, but it's not easy also. How all the memories that they've been through it, how all of this victim that they saw them from children to adults to different people close to them, family, colleague that lost through this conflict. I don't know how they survived, but I think they have a bigger something very strong inside them to survive, but it's not easy. I don't know how you can go through that. Personally, myself, because torture or documenting Syria, I kept have all the day, all my time, hard to sleep, bad dreams. I get angry very fast, and it's not easy, and you have to control that and be a normal person.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I wanted to open the discussion and to give the audience the possibility to ask some questions too, for Imad or Feras, as you wish. I can try to translate if you want to ask it in German. We work without microphones because of the COVID situation. Yeah. Why did they had to leave the hospital at the end? Why were they evacuated?
Well, the area being the Russian take the area after a long pressure and bomb, and they use the last chemical attack and that used over their Ost-Ghuta, make people really scary because they thought that it's gonna be very close the death of all the society. So in the end, the Syrian regime army with the Russian get closer and capture the area, and then there has been negotiation overseas by a couple of countries, international countries, and then they forced to place from their area. They run. I mean, they generally they didn't want to leave the area. So if they stay, they will kill because they are a witness on the crime against the humanity, witness about using the chemical attacks. And now who stayed behind, they arrested. And we don't know about them any information. Some of those doctors who've been portrayed in the film, we removed their pictures because we were scared about their lives. So because they are get arrested, so we removed their pictures. So now until now they are in the prison, but we don't know where.
Thank you. Did all of the inhabitants leave Ghouta at this time?
No, not all. Leaving your house is something really hard. Things not easy. I mean, I will bring my personal experience. My family pressured me strongly. My dad, my mom cried because they don't want to lose me. To see me killed after being arrested and tortured and get out. I survived from the prison, so they kept pressuring me to leave. So I left because that pressure I displaced. After like leaving Syria, it was hard time for me outside of Syria. After that, now we lost our house. It's been taken also the last campaign from the Syrian regime in Russian. So it's not easy for them. My father, my mother didn't leave the house until the last minute because there's nothing more important than the home and to stay in your home and something taken firstly from you. And that's what's in the case of the other people who feel like, okay, we're not gonna leave our house because there is no another solution. Not everyone could be in my case to get out to arrive to Europe to be saved. A lot of people they end in very hard situation. So nobody will leave their house. There's a lot of population stayed in Eastern Ghouta, but they live in a really hard life. There's that's the economic and the economic situation. It's very hard for the people. The bread, the food, and everything around them. It's really hard.
Thank you very much. We can have one last question if anyone is quick. Yeah. I don't know, Feras, if you were able to hear the question. I don't think so.
I didn't hear.
First, a big thank you for the film and congratulations, I guess. The question was how Dr. Amani felt having a film crew around her and in the hospital all the time, and maybe how big your film crew was.
There's no really film crew. It's just one cinematographer or sometimes two cinematographers who is handling small camera like the photograph, like the 5D Mark II or Mark III, that everyone, and I think half of the audience have this camera in their house, and that's what we use. We don't use sound equipment, we don't use anything. There's just a small camera, the camera moving around and following Dr. Amani and documenting. And every day, like every week sometimes, the photographer, they go there and they're spending a couple of hours in the hospital and then they leave. That's how it's work. It's through like 3 years from the work. It's not like they leave in the hospital or sleep in the hospital. No, they spend like specific hours because also the space of the hospital doesn't have the capacity like to those cinematographers to spend more times. They need every single space for saving lives.
Okay, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're already at the end and we can't take more questions. Thank you both so much for being here and for taking the time and for talking about your important work. And thank you also to the audience to be here to watch the film and to bring it out there, especially in this time where solidarity seems to be the only way out of COVID crisis. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.